Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is our Year to Shine, and today I'm going to be bringing you our February self-care challenge. This is from Cheryl Richardson's book, The Art of Extreme Self-Care. So actually I should say it's our Extreme Self-Care Challenge, chapter number 2 in the book. If you're watching real time, we're doing this for February 2021. And it is called Mirror, Mirror on the Wall. So I'm sure you can figure out that it has to do with a mirror, right? Have you guys heard of mirror work before? It's something that Louise Hay, one of my personal heroes, really talked a lot about. And actually I grabbed her book because, and then this is the 1984 edition, so the cover looks totally different, but it's called You Can Heal Your Life. And she was really a pioneer in the self-help, self-love, healing area. And also there is a great movie called You Can Heal Your Life, also put out by her. And actually the reason that I'm mentioning it is because Cheryl has some resources at the end of this chapter, and she does give a nod to both of those things. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this movie to my February list of things to do, because I haven't watched it in a couple years, and it is really good and life-changing. I've loaned it to so many people too. So mirror work is when you are looking in the mirror and saying something, like we talked about affirmations last year. I have to tell you, and you know what I'm gonna say, but it's difficult for me. And in this new place that I live, there's a full-length mirror in the bathroom, and I hate it. Like, I'm thinking about covering it with a curtain, because I have such body issues, it's just a struggle. And so this is not, you don't have to look at yourself fully, like top to bottom, in the mirror, but this is looking in the mirror to your face, to your eyes, and saying, I love you, and with your name there. So I love you, Carolyn. Remember last year when I took you on a tour of my office in my old place? I had a mirror on the desk that says, I love you, Carolyn. I've since taken that down off of this desk, but you could put sticky notes on your mirror in the bathroom. Really, anytime you see your reflection in a window, in a mirror, in the car when you're checking your face or something, then that's when you can be saying this. And I like the points that she makes here. She says, for most people, the idea of telling themselves I love you as they look in the mirror is a tricky exercise. Yes, I agree. The thought of doing so can feel awkward and silly. It's just not an easy thing to do. In fact, for several days after this presentation that she gave, that she was writing about earlier, she intended to practice Louise's suggestion, because it's from Louise Hay, but she kept forgetting. Then one night before going to bed, she says, I was washing my face when I remembered my intention. Finally, with the mirror in full view, I looked into my eyes and said, I love you, Cheryl. Immediately I felt self-conscious, as if someone was watching. I tried it again and glanced away, feeling embarrassed. On my third attempt, I found myself focusing on the wrinkles around my eyes, the hairs that needed to be plucked at the edges of my brows, and the way my skin seemed to sag a bit at my throat. Great, I thought. My attempt at self-love now has turned into a critical assessment of my aging process. I was failing miserably. So I can relate to that. And I even tried, I had a life coach once that told me to just start by only really focusing, like looking in your eyes, if it was too hard to look at your whole face. And same exact thing. It would be like, I would notice every little flaw in my eyes. So I think that that's something that comes from a very core level, right? It's a lot of what I'm trying to heal, and it's very hard. And people have self-loathing for many reasons, and something that I'm coming to terms with, and it has a lot to do with my depression. So I know it's not easy, is all I'm saying. What's so silly about telling ourselves that we love ourselves, Cheryl asks. Why is it so difficult to do something that's seemingly so simple? Because looking at ourselves intently, especially into our eyes, is a profoundly intimate act, she says. As often as we use a mirror to perform grooming or maintenance tasks, rarely do we even stop to gaze into our eyes for longer than a few seconds. That's true. I would say when I'm looking in the mirror, I'm looking at other parts of my body. I'm not really looking in my own eyes. Most of us come face to face with the truth that we've been abandoned, or that we have abandoned the person that we see in the mirror. Wow. I know that as I stared into my own eyes and repeated the phrase, "I love you, Cheryl," I had to confront the fact that the statement didn't ring true. The reality was that I saw flaws long before I felt love, and that's the point of this whole thing. To practice extreme self-care, you must learn to love yourself unconditionally, accept your imperfections, and embrace your vulnerabilities. From a spiritual perspective, it's about recognizing that you're a soul in a physical body who's here to learn to be more of who you are. When you treat and view yourself with the respect you deserve, you experience the peace that comes from being present to yourself. The reason it's so hard to look deeply into your own eyes is because it forces the ego to step aside as you experience a moment of seeing your true nature, a spiritual being housed in a physical shell. Yeah, and I like how she goes on to say that she uses pets as an example, that our pets can help us see the love. Like they don't care about cellulite or for other flaws that we may see when we look in the mirror. They just love us. They want to give us attention and play with us and snuggle. And she says, just as the cat is a wonderful mirror of how you can treat yourself, you also have a mirror that reflects a more loving and tender side of you. Perhaps it's your child, grandchild, or your garden even. What you care for most in a loving and patient way holds clues for how you need to care for yourself more consistently. That's what this book is about, the self-care, right? The longer that I used the mirror exercise, she goes on to say, the more I began to see it as an important shift and that it was coming underway for me. On a fundamental level, that's what extreme self-care is all about, extraordinarily mothering yourself. A good mother knows what helps a child feel whole in every way. She develops a finely tuned sensor that lets her know what her child needs, and using a loving, discerning eye, does her best to meet those needs. We did talk about last year about being a mother to yourself. Yeah, because Cheryl goes on to talk about how you can be a mother to yourself. So here is the actual extreme self-care challenge. Falling in love with you. And isn't that so well aligned with our book that we're going to be reading, Madly in Love with You? Madly in love with me. Yes, and you in that case. And she says, and I like this, remember Stuart Smalley from Saturday Night Live? How he said, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and gosh darn it, people like me. And she says, the idea of doing mirror work can seem like an episode of that. She says, for the next 30 days, you're going to make a point to stand or sit in front of the mirror, looking directly into your eyes and repeating aloud, I love you, and then insert your name. Regardless of how awkward or silly it feels, repeat it anyway. Repeat it until you begin to experience yourself in a spiritual way, as a presence that's deeper and broader and more expansive than your physical self. Think of it as moving beyond the personality called you and connecting with yourself more deeply at the level of your soul. This experience does take time, so don't worry if it seems hard. You'll have an entire month to practice, and there's no need to rush. For now, just show up and allow yourself to get comfortable with the new level of connection and intimacy. So, I'm thinking back to other times that I have read these self-care challenges. I don't think until just now, as I'm reading that to you, that I thought about it in the way that she just was explaining it there in the end. That this is your soul saying, I love you, Carolyn. This is not your ego saying that, because your ego is the one that is seeing all the flaws. So maybe that will help me and perhaps you if you are also struggling with doing something like this, because it is it is a vulnerable thing to sit there in front of the mirror, and it does feel weird, I know. But maybe journal about it. Try it, see how you feel, see what other feelings come up, see what other thoughts come up where she said, oh, like, I'm failing at this. Like, maybe you might think the same thing, like, oh, I'm so bad at this, or I've tried this before and it never works, or, you know, it makes me feel worse about myself. I hope it doesn't. But if it does, maybe it's starting without the mirror and just saying it to yourself, or having a little note card that says it, you know? So this month is about love, and we're talking about loving ourselves, especially. So stick around. I'm going to be diving in next to the Madly in Love with Me book, not Madly in Love with You, The Daring Adventure of Becoming Your Own Best Friend. And there is actually, I think, also a nod to this sort of daring act of love, she calls it, of looking in the mirror and also telling yourself I love you. And I think she even says to, like, write it on your hand at one point. So there'll be a lot of crossovers. So I hope that your February is off to a good start, and I hope to see you on the next video as well. Please leave me a comment. I love hearing from you guys, and welcome to some of the new subscribers I've seen jumping on the channel. Thank you so much for being here. Much love to you all. Bye-bye.